world feels a bit toxic and blah these days, doesn't it? The same old people coming up with the same old solutions for big problems that still don't work. We need to change the game. Well, welcome to Women Advancing. Join me, host Kate Byrne, in this dynamic bi-weekly podcast, bringing together female founders, funders, and thought leaders. Listen to the people driving change, how they got there, how you can help, and yep, how you might just be the next one to advance. Proof that all ships rise with women at the helm. That's what happens when Women Advance with Kate Byrne. Hey everyone, it's your host Kate Byrne with Women Advancing. I love full circle life moments. And today I sit down with Julie Keshmiry and I enjoy exactly that. And you will too, for a number of different reasons. Julie and I first met way back when in the agency world in San Francisco. And we went on to break what had long been a historic only male fishing trip up in Alaska. And two other of our colleagues went and we broke that glass ceiling. And we went on to learn a lot about leadership and definitely hydration management. Little pro tip from Julie, don't drink 3 cans of Diet Coke before boarding the boat with no bathroom. But since those days, Julie's career has been a masterclass in evolution. From agency strategist to senior executive, chief of staff focusing on operational excellence for products such as Intel and Visa, to board leader. And now she is the author of Princess Shmincess, where she rewrites the rules of the fairy tale and maybe corporate life too. In this episode, we talk about the architecture of influence, how uniqueness is your superpower. So don't worry about being different. Own it. Remember that line from Princess Diaries? Why would you want to fit in when you were born to stand out? Very relevant here. The middle space of leadership and what it really means to hold things together in organizations that are large and layered and endlessly political. We also dig a bit into the power of saying no, the myth of having it all, and why redefining strength might just start with, frankly, a little laughter. Because as Julie reminds us, confidence isn't something you're handed. It's built, broken, and rebuilt again through saying yes, failing, and finding your way back to yourself and helping others do the same. Don't forget to stay to the end. I got a lot of KB takeaways with this one. And let me know what else you'd like to hear. Women Advancing listeners, welcome, welcome. Are you in for a treat today? We are joined by Julie Keshmiry, who had a corporate life where she was so many things, but primarily, most recently, the chief of staff, focusing on operational excellence at such household names as Visa, Microsoft, Intel, to name a few, but has just recently authored a book, which I'm super excited to talk about, called Princess Shmincess. But before we get into that, we're going to dig deep on just how we actually got to where we are today. So Julie, hello, and welcome.
Hello, Kate. I'm so excited to be here. It's lovely to see you again.
Yes, me too. So, the thing that I love about this is Julie and I will share in full disclosure, we go way back, 20 plus years. You wouldn't know it looking at us. So we were from way back when, you could say, glass ceiling breakers, pioneers, all sorts of things. But in this case, brings us back to a little bit of a fish story. So at the time I was working with Business Week, and the boys had always for the longest time gone up to do a fishing trip up in Alaska. Girls had never been invited. So me being me said, no, that's wrong. So I convinced them to allow us and me to bring people up to Alaska. Julie was one of those people. Julie, talk about the trip a little bit.
Yeah, kudos to you, Kate, for breaking the glass fishing ceiling and busting through
that glass boat floor.
This is where we solidified our friendship. But, I think about it. We had so much fun, silliness, but there's some things we learned there. Like, I think about the lessons. Like, we walked in and they gave us our own guide and coach. So it was the girls' boat and the guys' boat. And we didn't assume that we knew what we were doing. And I think that was, you could say, was a leadership lesson. Like we walked in going, we don't know anything about fishing. We don't. So we just listened. We listened to the expert and he guided us and we actually did really well. And we caught a ton of fish on that trip. So there's a lesson to take as the value of coming into new situations when you're not an expert and listening. And the other thing we learned is I will never forget, we were in this little boat and we asked our guide and we were like, okay, so where do we go to the bathroom? And he was like, bathroom, you just hang over the side there. The lesson there was when he says, hey, would you like another drink? The right answer is no, we would not.
No, we would
Thank
not.
you.
Thank you very much. And it's so true. And the truth of the matter is that we were the first ones to catch the large salmon limit. We caught the largest fish. And what would happen was I could tell that our guide first felt, oh man, I got the short straw. I got the chick boat. But soon he came to realize, oh, wait, no, I think I got the winning boat. We would stop. We would cheer each other on. And it was such an example of just communal excitement about each other doing well. Whereas everybody else on the other boy boats were busy toiling away, competing, forcing, driving, pushing. And we just had an amazing time as a result. Thank you very much. We left victorious.
Yeah, turns out pulling in a 40-pound fish is hard, and you do need someone cheering for you when you're going through.
Yeah, you do. Yeah, you do. And it doesn't, just because they get theirs first doesn't mean yours isn't next, is the other thing. So then from there, my friend, you do have a varied experience, right? So you've navigated the agency world, then gone corporate client side, as we in the advertising business say, going inside Intel and Visa. What surprised you about that difference between the agency world and the Fortune 100 worlds and influencing those two bodies?
Yeah, the agency world, there's a distinct difference that I noticed. In the agency world, you're working with your clients, and in this case, mine was media. We were planning and buying media, so we were working with clients who were very specific in media planning and buying. You might kind of go up the marketing chain and up to the CMO, but you had a very vertical stack that you were influencing, and you were a step removed. And there's benefit in that because you see things and you have different perspective that you bring to the table, but you're not involved in their politics and the kind of some of the operational things that they have going on. Then you go client side and your sphere of influence becomes, instead of a vertical stack, it becomes far more horizontal. I was in marketing, but any job mostly, in big companies, you're working with so many departments. We're working with the product team, the legal team, the sourcing team, all sorts of the teams within marketing. And each of those come to the table with their own, hopefully generally aligned, but maybe slightly different objectives, legit objectives and vision that they have. And so the influence is far more horizontal. And I think it just requires a lot more skills around understanding the culture and understanding, what they want as compared to what you want and how to find common ground.
And goes back to listening.
Yeah.
Period. First and foremost, of all the agency skills that you had, what do you think was the most transferable? Because that's the thing. There's so many of these skills, and people think, well, I don't know how to. If I go into this industry versus this industry, I don't know how to do that. But I always feel like, yeah, you actually do. To your point, there are skills, and they just are called different things. Would you agree?
I would. And one of the skills in marketing is understanding your audience. And there's a variety of ways to do that. And part of learning from research and listening. And those are whether you're a marketer or whether your audience, you're a salesperson and your audience is, who you're selling to. That is very much a transferable skill across any type of industry.
So you make the transfer, you make the shift, the transition, right, from the vertical to the breadth, from the depth to the breadth. Is that kind of squishy? Is there a weird sort of floaty middle space? And if so, I know people have often, as well as yourself, you have kind of described yourself as a connector. Not necessarily always the top decision maker, but the one that really holds the space and holds things together. how do you lead, or what are the things that you lean the most upon to be effective in that in-between space, especially when people are not necessarily telling you, "Great job."
When you say in between space, like that is the space, what you're talking about, that chief of staff roles live in, meaning our influence is not because it's who reports to us and who do we manage. In fact, chief of staff, sometimes they don't have any reports or small teams, if at all. And so you have to lead in a different way. It is the chief of staff kind of influence comes from the fact that you understand your principals. In my case, most recently, Visa, the principal's CMO. I'm working for the CMO. You understand their vision. You understand what they're trying to accomplish. You're putting operational structure in place to deliver on that. You're removing friction on the teams, that might hurt those things. And so people are coming to you not because you manage a certain function or a certain division. They're coming to you because if you know the business and you know what they care about really well, you can help them and you can support them and you can help them navigate through things. And it's not so different than, because I think to me, that's the definition of leadership, though. And I remember having this conversation with my daughter. Leadership is not if you have influence. And because many young people think, well, I don't know if I'm a leader. Like I don't, the team captain. And I remember when my daughter wrote her college essay, she's in college now, and she wasn't the team captain. She didn't found the club. What she did, though, was she was the one that the team came to when they had relationship things that they needed to resolve. She was the mediator. And so she had a leadership type of role that she didn't recognize until we sat down and had a talk about it and said, no, you are playing a role here. It's not formal, but it exists.
And wouldn't you say, and that's a really great example, wouldn't you also say that now that we have so many more sort of team hives, I guess I would say, that things are so much more project-based, there's more room for all of those influencers that then really results in many leaders of influence on a team?
Yeah, and influence is obviously different than decision making, right? Decision
Yes.
making, you do, you want someone who can be that one to kind of whether they're authoritative, like this is the way we're going to do it because I have a vision, or whether they're consensus building. Like there's
Mhm.
decision making is one thing, but influence is something that many people, you should understand the value you have and the expertise you bring, and usually that comes with influence.
Yeah. No, absolutely. So you find yourself working with these brands that every time you mention, "Oh, yeah, I work at this. I work at Intel. I work at Visa. I work at Microsoft." Everyone knows those brands, right? And to a degree, in their respective industries and sectors, they've shaped the way we kind of think about technology and trust, and we can count on them. How did working inside those cultures actually change the way you view your own personal brand and professional credibility? I mean, did it have an impact?
There was a link, and you're right. Trust is really important for these companies. When you think about Intel invented the whole Intel Inside program. And what that meant was, as a consumer, when you bought a laptop, if you saw a little sticker on there, you could have confidence that this technology was going to be fast, it was going to be reliable, it would work. On the Visa side, trust is super important because we don't even think about the fact that you use your Visa card and it's going to work. They're the railways for the transactions, trillions of transactions. And Visa has this thing where they say they focus on 5 nines. The failure rate of a Visa transaction is that they don't want it to be within the range of 0.99999. So that is how reliable that network is. So trust from a marketer's perspective, we know trust plays a role in the outcomes you want. What do marketers want? They want things like, I want you to prefer my brand. I want you to ultimately sometimes love my brand, and ultimately leading to sales. So those are the things that marketers want. Trust is a component of that. And I think if you transfer that over to your personal brand is not just what you say on LinkedIn. It's not just how you talk about yourself. It is also the trust you build. So what do people say about you when you're not in the room? And
Mhm.
what they say about you, you've built that up through your reputation, through earning their trust, through demonstrating your excellence. That part of your brand is just as important as what you say about yourself.
And I think that's the part so many people oddly forget about, or you can get a little bit lazy about it, or especially if you're burnt out, or you're tired, or you're frustrated, or there are shifts that take place. What are some things that people could do or pay attention to? Or is there like a self-brand audit that you would suggest people take a look at? To you, what are the 2 or 3 most important things when you're thinking of, like, your personal brand?
Yeah, I encourage people to think about the values that they hold as a leader, in our broader definition of a leader.
Mhm.
And I have come up with mine. I just listened to your podcasts with Susie, and she was talking about like her approach to find the things that you're really good about and the
Yep.
things that you value. So there's a lot of resources out there to be able to find like these things. But for me, the things that I talk about when is integrity is important to me. And I think that helps to build trust. Like integrity, and that comes from like the first boss I had. He showed up every day consistently. He did what he said he was going to do, and that meant a lot to me just as my first job in the corporate world. So integrity is important, collaboration is important. I just am a believer of that, and it's a lot of people's collaboration. Oh, it's a good thing. Yay, everyone loves collaboration, but if you truly believe in that, you have to devote the time that it takes to actually, collaborate, but I think you will get to better outcomes with collaboration. And I care a lot about transformation. Like that's the thing that gets me excited. So those are the things that I have said. These are my leadership principles. And I use the integrity filter for a lot of decisions, like what's right for the business, but what's right for the people too. And I would encourage people there's so many great resources and tools out there. If you don't know what to talk about for your values, is to use those resources. And Susie Welch is one, but there's lots of other ones.
That's such a great point because I think so often we sort of kick that one down the can. We think, "Oh, okay, eventually I'll get around to that," or "I don't have to I'll deal with that when I'm ready to make a shift in my career," right? Whereas if you get it at the gate, it also really impacts trust, feelings of safety, which then, to your point with transformation, those 2 things are really imperative for innovation.
Yes, the secret.
Yeah, because you can throw stuff, then there is no wrong, there is no fear, it's just kind of fun and play. Not fun, I'm not gonna say play, but it's fun because you just feel, "Okay, I'm gonna give this a try, I'm gonna sort of test this out, I'm gonna see what ends up happening, and I know that if it happens, yay, if it doesn't, yay." All of those are good learnings to have and worthwhile for everybody.
Yes, you will not have risk taking that can lead to innovation without psychological safety.
Yeah, no, so true. So, speaking of safety and courage and bravery, let's look at our new type of heroine, and that would be, yes, Princess Shmincess. So, Julie, talk a little bit about this. And I love the whole premise. I know you're on the board of, or you were previously, right, on the boards of Girls Leadership. So, tell me the story of Princess Shmincess, because I love that you went on to write this book. It launched. I'm going to ask you to show us and I will be including a link, everybody. So be sure to go and get it. It's a fabulous holiday gift. I'm just saying, it's an
Mhm.
any day gift. But talk a little bit about that. What inspired you to write it?
Yes, so I actually wrote it 15 years ago. And it was at a time my daughter was 6. We were reading a lot of bedtime stories together. And there was a lot of stories about like the damsel in distress. And there was a lot of traditional, what I would say is traditional princess stories. And I was like, listen, it is okay. If you are a girly girl and you love the pink poofy dress, that is awesome. But where are the stories for the girls who maybe that's not their thing?
Yep.
And I couldn't find it at the time anywhere. And so I thought I wrote the story that I wanted to read to my daughter. And so the story is about, and the reason, you can tell with a name like Princess Schmincess, Princess Alexandria von Schmincess, but she really
Yes.
wants to go by Alex. And she's just not your typical character. She snorts when she laughs and she wants to play drums in a rock and roll band. She doesn't want to practice proper posture. And so it is kind of a traditional story that there's a dragon involved who she becomes meets, and they like learn together that happiness is about following your heart, just not following others' expectations. So this is it.
This is it right there, right there. And I know you can get it on Amazon and all sorts of, so go check it out. So what do you hope parents and kids actually take away from the book?
Well, I hope for kids that they will, and 'cause the stories that we tell kids matter, right? That, like whether it's
Mhm.
the stories they're seeing in the media, film and social media. And so to me, books are stories we tell kids, and there's always like values and lessons that are embedded in there. And so for kids, what I hope is that they think, what makes me different? It's not just okay, but it actually can be magical. It could be a superpower. And for parents, and adults, I hope they think, I want to encourage these differences in my kids. And for just anyone, it's really for anyone who just believes happiness is following your heart and not others' expectations.
Well, and I think for so many women also, it's remembering that very thing, that your uniqueness is your superpower.
Yeah.
So speak up. That's why we are trying so hard to get so many more folks, comfortable in standing up or, sharing their differing point of view, not apologizing for it. Doesn't mean you have to be belligerent about it, but seriously, I don't know about you, but I found so often if I ask the question or I point out something that feels sort of off to me that doesn't fit, someone else will say, I'm so glad you asked that.
Yeah.
Right? So it just takes one of us to be we all have that ability to be that person in the room to raise the question and get the conversation started and then eventually shift it for generations to come.
Yeah. And there are things, I think, as a society, a lot of things that maybe, whether it's your race or your sexual orientation that, at one time you maybe thought like wasn't valued and wasn't a superpower. And you realize, actually, it is. It is a big part of who I am and what I offer.
Right. Exactly. No, so true. Okay. I know that there are few folks who are thinking about, okay, gosh, I've long had a passion, much as you, for writing a book. So, what was the biggest lesson you learned during the publishing process? And do you have any advice for professionals who kind of want to take on this as a side passion project?
Yeah, I do. And part of the lesson, so you heard me say I wrote it when my daughter was 6. She's 21 now. So
Yeah, crazy to me. I'm
15
really
years.
old now.
What happened? 15 years, life, career, like I set it aside, but the publishing industry was really different 15 years ago. It was at that time you would take, if you were writing a children's book, you would submit it, your manuscript to the big publishing houses and mail it and hope and wait. And what's changed now is so this in this case, time was on my side a little bit because now I think 70% of books published are self-published. So that's the
Wow.
model that I went is actually I did a self-published with support, meaning I founded a group that offered some a cohort support and some, guidance around editing and things like that. But it was still published and I still, own the creative control of this. So the model changed, and so did media and marketing because I did a lot of marketing for in social media. To the social media existed, but not to the same degree that I could do that. So those things were to my advantage for the waiting. But I also would say if you got a side passion project, you can't wait forever. Like it can be done. And part of the way that I did this was you got to think about like doing it with integrity and making sure, not using your company, you got the main job, not using your company's time, your company's resources. You want to preserve your own integrity and keep your company trust. So you're doing this on nights or weekends. And that's the way I did it was like Sundays for me. Sundays, like kind of devote some time consistently to be able to do this. And so that's how it was like, how do you navigate that having still the family and the career, but trying to make some progress on something you love and something you're passionate about. So that was just kind of methodically how I approached it.
So through that though, did they also the support group, were they the ones who helped you, for instance, find an illustrator?
Yeah, so what they would do is it was still a lot of self-driven activity, but just a little bit of resources around these are some websites where we have some trusted illustrators, and here's a legal contract.
Uh,
And at the time, that was great. And by the way, things have even changed dramatically because if you asked me a year ago, I'd be like, oh, that is so amazing. Thank you. Today, I'd probably like, oh, I might be able to just use some AI and kind of figure out the ways to get. So even today, it's changed versus a year ago. I think today, I would be much more comfortable doing a lot of things with my partners,
right.
AI partners that I use.
Yeah, 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 yeah. So one area that I kind of want to talk a bit about and touch upon with you is boards. Because I know a lot of women advancing listeners are either on boards or trying to be on boards. And talk a little bit about that because they can be both powerful and great. They can also be political. What do you wish more women knew about before stepping into those rooms?
Well, the first thing is I wish more women went for the opportunity and were given the opportunity, because if I round numbers, I think 30% of women are on U.S. public boards. It gets a little higher when you go nonprofit. Then you go kind of from the 30s to in the 40s. And you can debate about, is a nonprofit a good way to segue into a public board? I think it is. I'm in the camp that I do believe it is. So I have spent my 6 years, I was on a nonprofit board. And so beyond the just go for it, there's some things to know specifically. That's the experience I could speak to on the nonprofit board, which is, and some of this is not so much different than just entering a team. The first thing of showing up and having confidence, you're there for a reason. You've been selected for a reason. You should contribute. You can contribute and feel comfortable contributing on day one based on what you bring to the table. It's no different, whether that's a new role, a new meeting you've been in, or whether it's a board. But there's some specifics with nonprofits, just understanding the team dynamics and understanding, again, any new team, understanding the dynamics around you. Nonprofits often have founders who are super passionate about, this space, and knowing what that means. And there's sometimes a blurry line between a small nonprofit staff and the board and what should they do. And that line is very clear on public boards, but it can get a little blurry, in a nonprofit board. So just understanding the dynamics to help to navigate those types of things. And the last thing is, sometimes with a nonprofit, they're smaller and they're strapped to resources. They're looking for what we say is the 3 T's. They're looking for your time, volunteering. They're looking for your treasure. Yes, it is about donations or driving donations and connecting. And they're looking for your talent. So those are all the kind of areas that they're looking for. But one of the things in your talent is you are often, the ones are saying, asking some of the hard questions. This is what the role of a public or nonprofit board is. Is your plan operationally sound? Let's take a look at the financial, the P&L, and what's projected. Those, you got to kind of go in and you got to be, asking the tough kind of questions. So those are kind of just things I learned along the way that I didn't necessarily know going into it.
And for those who are on the receiving end of the board's advice and suggestions, just remember, because having been on a few myself, is that, when the board members are actually giving direct and strong either recommendations with insights, it's with good intent, right? And it's with a positive and outcome in mind. They're not trying to be overly controlling. There are some who may, but for the most part, I've witnessed a few folks who end up getting quite defensive or seeing it as, oh my gosh, you're criticizing me. You don't think you're going to be looking to replace me as ED, blah, blah, blah. And that's not often the case. In some case, it might be. But really what it is you brought them on. So I would urge everyone to listen to them.
Yeah, it's a good counterbalance to the comments that I just made.
Yeah, absolutely. So, all right, you have done so much and you've done it all super duper well. How do you define enough? Right? This culture that always says more, 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 more. How do you know, and how are you confident in saying, you know what? I'm good. In my mind, karmic contract complete. I'm going to go do this now. I don't need to climb and scale another building. I'll leave it at that.
I think I'm still kind of figuring that out. It's a balance, but I know what my definition is. This is not everyone's definition, because earlier in my career, I was going for the more. What's the next title? What's the next salary bump? You're going, and there is nothing wrong with the hustle and going for the more.
Agreed.
And then as life progressed, and particularly after the pandemic, I think that to me, what is enough? What is enough? To me, enough is when I can contribute some transformation in a Fortune 100 company, but can I also change the narrative of girls and women out there? Can I hold that day job down and also be emotionally present for my family? So for me, enough is about integration of all those things so that I'm not compromising my values. I do not personally want to be the person who is so successful in one area that it's at an expense of the other things. So that is important for me, the integration. And it's for others, it might be like, I got this track and those are the ones that really change the world. So I support that as a route too. But for me, is about making sure that my life feels integrated in the things that I want to do. And it's not compromising the values I hold, whether it's about my wellness or my family or the things that I care about in addition to a corporate job that I have.
And that kind of leads into this next piece that I kind of want to talk a little bit about. And it's something that I find that I am coming face to face with as my daughters are now in the workforce and they're actually stepping into, in some cases, in one case, the next phase of work, right? So they've done one, that's great. Now they're ready to kind of go to this next level. And, they will come to me for advice, which I'm very honored. And I'm realizing, man, things have changed a bit since early days when I was their age, to your point, going up, up, wanting to go up, up, up. What should we be telling and sharing with girls and their parents to kind of know a little bit more about just confidence, corporate life, and what it is today? I mean, we learned the hard way. Is there any way other than that? I mean, I'd like to say no, it's all going to be easy peasy, but it isn't always.
Yeah, first of all, I do want to say kudos to Gen Z coming in. Like I love the values they're coming in with, and how they think about work and balance. And I think they got a lot of things right. And to your specific kind of confidence question, for me, I was like, "Ooh, I think I know the formula. I've cracked the code." For me,
Nice.
it's a joke, as a formula, but for me,
Yes.
it's experience and failure, and the experience that like that's what's given me confidence over time. And the failure part was really unexpected. The experience part is like saying yes, trying more things, and the more experience I found I had, the more I felt confident to speak up and talk about that. And I remember one time in my career, I was working doing domestic media planning and buying for at an agency for Microsoft, and my peer worked with all the 40 countries in our network that did it. And
Wow.
I wanted to learn international, and he wanted to learn domestic. We had not done that, and we architected a job swap, and somehow we got our boss to say yes to it. So we did that, and that was an amazing experience to be able to kind of learn to round out skills there. So
Great.
that was, on the experience part. The unexpected side was the value of failure. Because at the start of my career, it was like, everything must be perfect, my T's must be crossed, no, cannot fail. And then you learn, like, some of the biggest lessons in life and work are the things that didn't go right or the things that failed. And the value of that to also give you confidence. And as we talked about, like the value of that as a manager to allow your team to fail so that they have psychological safety. They can therefore also be in an environment comfortable to take risks. I never really thought about that as something that could have positive parts, and to not worry about to take more risks and know that sometimes it's not going to work out.
You can stumble and you'll pick yourself back up.
Yeah.
And life goes on. And guess what? People still love you. And you're still you at the end of the day because you're more than that.
Yeah.
So much more. So, connector. I love thinking, through lines. So, you've got agency, hustle, you got your tech giant, you've got your author board. What's the through line? What's the one thing for all of those different chapters that, that stays, that is just you?
I kind of think about almost two through lines. I think about from a job perspective, no matter what role I've had and what I've done, when you think about your capabilities and what gives you energy, like my through line has always been operational transformation and marketing. Every job, no matter what I've had, it's kind of all in that category. It took me a little bit to understand, like that's
That's
my
your
area.
thing. That's your jam.
Outside of work, also, I've done a variety of things. Yes, I've been on a board, and my husband and we are adopted parents, and we taught international adoption to prospective parents. And so, all of the things that we've done, the through line is advocacy for a world of greater opportunity and equity for women and children. That's and again, I noticed afterwards the thread. What is interesting for me is kind of those things have been outside my job. And I wonder, in my life, can I bring those lines together? Like, what about the world where that is part of the company I work at or the job that I have. So that's still an opportunity for me. We'll see if maybe that can happen one day. If not, I'm totally fine with the balance and having them both there. But maybe one day, well, that's the job that I have will be in the passion area that I care about.
Well, I gotta tell you, I think that the way the world right now needs those 2 things to collide, the sooner the
Mm.
better, right? And I think it's on its way, and the beautiful thing is now you've got space that'll allow this vacuum to be filled by that. And from it just in terms of positivity and all of these other things, that'll be magnetic. And I have no doubt in my mind that there'll be a few opportunities, more than a few opportunities coming your way, and you'll have your pick. And that's the other beauty is now that you are where you are, both as a professional, but also really just as a person, comprehensive, amazing person, is that I bet you'll have the bravery to go, okay, guess what? I get to pick who I want to work with right now. And that was something that shifted with me. And I know not everybody has that, but here's what you do have. To Julie's point, if your values are integrity, then you get to pick, I want to work with somebody who has integrity, right? And there are a lot of people, for every person that doesn't have it, there are people that do. It may require a little bit of a little bit of a wait, a little bit of longer wait, but just everyone deserves the right to be choosy, really. And the world is much more benefited by you being that way too.
Well, thank you, Kate. I appreciate what you say, and I appreciate what you're doing for you're not just breaking glass fishing ceilings, you're breaking other glass ceilings, and you're bringing people along with you and supporting women and how they advance. So thank you for all the work you're doing.
Oh, well, it's my pleasure. I love every minute of it because there's so many amazing people doing amazing things. And the truth is, we all have uniqueness. And the Princess Shmincess, Alex would say, that is all of our superpowers. So knowing what you know now, lady, what advice would you give your younger self?
I think the advice I would give my younger self is that confidence advice. It
Yep.
took some time. And so to understand, what you bring to the table, that you speak up in those meetings where I had the same feeling you had, which is I have that question, but no, everybody must know the answer. No, you have that question. There's so many other people who don't. So having the confidence to say yes to experiences, to your failures are not going to define you. You'll grow from them. Speak up. It's that took just a little bit of time, and I do think this younger generation has a lot of that. So yes,
I do too, especially how they're choosing either to stay or leave jobs.
yeah,
I think there's some generations or folks in certain generations that take that as they're lazy, they're spoiled, they're this, they're that. And it's like, are they? Or are they just realizing what you just said? This is not values aligned, or
value driven.
it's not a fit for me.
Yeah,
I'm not a fit for it. So let's end it now so that both of us can go on to a world where we're better fits for each other.
yeah.
Oh, well, Julie, thank you so much for just your many pearls. And I'm going to say, seriously, listeners, run out. Don't walk, run. But seriously, check out Princess Shmincess. It's really a great story, and it's a great reminder not only for our daughters, but for ourselves and for those of us who have moms. Never too late. I'm just saying. For grandma and great grandma too.
Thank you, Kate. I appreciate it so much.
Thanks. Until next time.
Bye bye.
Julie is honestly one of my favorite I knew you won stories. And the thing that I love about Julie is she is really true to living those values and she just embodies them. And it's one of those things where don't you love like reconnecting with someone and it could be 20 years, 10 years, 5 years, and it feels like just yesterday. And that's who she is. And that's because she's so undeniably her, which is makes sense to me that one of my key takeaways is your uniqueness is your superpower. So don't try to blend in, own it, own that, which then means owning your voice, owning that seat at the table, contribute from day one, whether it's inside a boardroom, whether it's in a new job. You were there for a reason. You take it and make sure that you share your wisdom because there's a reason why you're there. And not doing so, everybody loses on that. Yes, sure, you, but so does the company that you keep. I love the notion that leadership it's about influence. And sure, we know that, which is different from decision making. And we all have different spheres of influence. And that means oftentimes knowing when to listen and knowing when to hand the mic to those around us and help bring them up and therefore be a mentor and or a sponsor speaking for folks when they're no longer in the room. Know your personal brand inside out, live those values. There's no getting away from that. And then finally, I love Julie's recipe, shall you say, or formula in her words, for confidence, which is experience in saying yes plus failing and learning from that equals confidence. Bring it, baby. I fear nothing. And as such, I become this magnet of, and also just an incredibly person who brings about transformation wherever I go. Innovation, yeah, because I stand to lose nothing, because I always know I'm going to learn from whatever happens, and I'm not afraid. So with that, look forward to our next conversation. Do run out to Amazon or a bookstore and look for Princess Shmincess. You won't regret it. Until next time.
Thanks for listening. May this episode inspire you to move forward. Be sure to go to iTunes, Spotify, katebyrne.co, that's KATEBYRNE.co, or wherever you listen to your podcasts and listen to even more episodes. Here's to strong women. May we know them, may we be them, may we raise them. And be sure to meet them on the next Women Advancing. Ta till next time.